Welcome to Roadmap to Discovering OERs, presented by the Kishwaukee College Library. We are going to start our OER journey by learning about open educational resources and navigating the OER highway. You'll soon know more about OERs and the steps involved in adopting an OER for your course. There are a few important terms you should understand about OERs as we begin our journey. First, OER stands for Open Educational Resources, and people usually think of these as free textbooks. There are other OERs as well, including supplemental readings, videos, classroom activities, tests, modules, even whole courses. The main commonality between all these OER resources is that they are typically free or low cost and have no or limited restrictions. These materials are either in the public domain or have a Creative Commons license allowing for their use. Creative Commons is a copyright license that allows for no or low cost access to materials that are offered freely and openly to people to use and reuse. The Creative Commons licenses allow the creator of the OER to determine how their work will be used by others. This chart shows the more common Creative Commons licenses. The BY code shows that the original creator of the work should be given credit. ND means that no derivatives can be made to the work. It must be used in its original form. ND is the most restrictive of the Creative Commons licenses. SA stands for Share Alike and is kind of the opposite of ND. In Share Alike, others can move the content around in the original, such as rearranging the order of the chapters or adding to or deleting some of the content. But the Creative Commons licensing of the new work must remain the same as the original. NC stands for non-commercial, meaning that the work should not be sold for commercial purposes. The Creative Commons license variations can be assigned according to the creator's wishes, such as BY, SA, and C, which would mean that the original author should be given credit for the work, BY, the content of the work can be switched around, SA, and the work must be used in a non-commercial manner, NC. You'll notice these Creative Commons licenses when you begin to search for OERs for your courses. The 5 R's of OER were created by Dr. David Wiley of Lumen Learning. Lumen Learning defines open content as, quote, any copyrightable work that is licensed in a manner that provides users with free and perpetual permission to engage in the 5R activities, end quote. The 5 R's are activities associated with OERs that make them open resources under the protection of the Creative Commons licensing. Users can participate in the R's as long as they are following the Creative Commons licenses assigned by the OER's creator. One of the first steps in beginning an OER project is to confer with your dean. OER adoption is a very collaborative process, and you'll need some guidance from your dean, who has probably already helped other faculty adopt OERs. You'll be providing updates to your dean periodically during the process. You will also want to do some research about OERs to learn more about them, copyright, and best practices for using OERs in your course. Another step to consider is to explore OERs that are already available. In order to do this, you need to fully understand the student learning outcomes of your course, be aware of the current content of your textbook and course materials, and have some idea of what kind of OER you want to adopt: a full textbook, supplemental readings, videos, or a combination. Kish Library can direct you to catalogs and indexes of OERs. You also might want to consider making your own OER. Once you've selected possible OERs and evaluated them as to their usefulness, you'll want to investigate the copyright and Creative Commons licensing so that you know how that work can be used. For example, do you have to use the OER as it was created with no derivatives? Or can you switch chapters or pages around and add content of your own? You'll also have to either adapt the OER to your course or your course to your OER, which means updating your syllabus, revising the content of your course, updating your course calendar, etc. You might have to modify assessments, homework, or exams in your course to reflect the OER. Just be aware that depending on the change, you may have to submit course updates to the curriculum committee, especially if your course description or title changes. Adapting the OER to your course can be time-consuming, considering you have to make sure the students' learning outcomes are being met for the course. Once you've adopted an OER for your course, you'll need to notify your dean, the bookstore, and even Kish Library, all of which will help make the OER available to your students, either through the bookstore or the library's Course Reserves collection or Brightspace. There are many steps involved in these 5 broad categories of activities. This is just a guideline to get started. Kish Library can provide you with support and resources as you begin to learn more about OERs and search for them. We have created a guide for learning more about OERs and where you can find them. A good place to begin your investigation of all things OER is the Oer Commons. We are part of the Illinois Hub. The Oer Commons provides you with access to some of the available OERs, plus each institution in Illinois. The Kishwaukee College institution page is where we plan to house any OERs created by Kish faculty. Kish Library can help you find OERs and point you in the direction of which repositories, catalogs, or websites would be good places to check depending on your discipline. We can recommend 3 books to you that are excellent for beginners to OER. The Oer Starter Kit is for those new to OER and introduces readers to the use and creation of OERs. Modifying an open textbook gives you step-by-step instructions for importing and editing OERs and platform types. Make sure you are using an acceptable word processing or publisher kind of software if you create your own OER. These 2 books are freely available OERs. How cool! The 3rd book recommendation is from our Overdrive collection with best practices for incorporating OERs into your classroom. Thanks for joining us on our road trip to OERs.